Trade talks are intensifying around the Vancouver Canucks as an NHL insider revealed exactly what Patrik Allvin is looking for on the trade market, and this is going to surprise a lot of fans. But not only that, we get a huge report on Kiefer Sherwood and where him and the management currently stand as the forward heads into the final year of his contract. We're going to break down all these trade reports on the Vancouver Canucks from Patrik Allvin saying we're open for business, and this insider revealing exactly what they're looking for. That's not a second line center. That has fans surprised. But not only that, we're going to break down the report on Kiefer Sherwood and where he currently stands with the Vancouver Canucks, plus what his cap hit will come in at. We're going to break down all this and so much more later on this episode. So before we get into that, I want to give a huge shout out to everyone watching this video. We're trying to reach our goal of 8,500 subscribers, just a couple away. So make sure to go down and hit that free subscribe button. It means the world, and in return, we'll give you daily updates from all around the team. But with that, let's just hop straight into the trade reports today because we've seen a lot. Listen, Jim Rutherford and Patrik Allvin have spoke a lot on this. And just before we get into the report, coming from an NHL insider, we've seen Jim Rutherford go out to say, we talked about it at the end of the season, about getting a little more depth at center. I know Patrik was on the phone almost on a daily basis. Either players weren't available that he wanted or the prices were sky high. We're seeing a really weird mold of the NHL right now where everyone is buying and no one is selling. We're seeing a lot of more teams enter the market wanting to buy. The Florida Panthers just lost Barkov, and they will be in the hunt for more middle six help in the center position, but not a lot of teams are currently selling. Mason McTavish just signed with the Anaheim Ducks. Marco Rossi, who the Canucks were linked to, was signed by the Minnesota Wild. The market is getting thinner, but it's going to start opening up once teams get through camp into the regular season and start to realize that they got to sell. Now, the big thing is Patrik Allvin had an awesome quote, or I should have one-liner, where he came out to say, we're open for business. Teams can call. This Vancouver team is looking to add at some point down the middle. Now with this, we know the Vancouver Canucks have been looking for a second line center. We've seen Filip Hronek look great during preseason. We're seeing other guys really step up. Jonathan Lekkerimäki is looking like the second line center of the future, but this is where things get interesting when the Canucks are reportedly not looking for that second line center. David Pagnotta of the fourth period, and all of this will be linked down below, goes in to say, I do think the Canucks are going to start just looking around for a mid-six, bottom-six type of forward. They started poking around. I think they'll escalate that a little bit. Now, we know the Canucks are open for business, but seeing the words bottom six or middle six is a little surprising. Listen, a middle six center is perfect. That is your second line. But the fact that Patrik Allvin and company might be searching for something other than that second line center position either shows they have a lot of faith in Filip Hronek, or the team thinks giving up the assets to acquire a player like that is just not reasonable. Now, the Canucks can add a lot. Listen, a third line player goes a long way, but the big thing with the Canucks, they do have a lot of guys that are stationed to play on the third line or fighting for it, so trading for that doesn't seem like the perfect fit. The Canucks do have cap space, 3.1, a tiny bit extra cap space with Höglander out week to week with his ankle injury, but that's not going to be with them for the entirety of the season. So if the Canucks want to make a move, get a tiny bit of relief on the cap, to go out of their way to pick up a guy and see how things work, now would be a perfect time. We know this management group doesn't like to make moves in the middle of the offseason, but hey, they traded Shilovs, they traded Dakota Joshua. This is lining up, and once we see more players sent down to the respective leagues, the juniors, the OHL, or all the way down to Abbotsford, this is where the Canucks are finally going to realize this is what we have, this is what we need. Now, going into the lines, we know what the lines are kind of going to look like going in. Jonathan Lekkerimäki has looked outstanding in the preseason. This is being recorded before the Edmonton game tonight, so a lot of these guys could go off, but the big thing is, with Jonathan Lekkerimäki looking like a top six, if Patrik Allvin is looking at this and saying, hey, maybe we want to add another third line center. Maybe we want to add just an overall second line center. Things are going to get interesting. This is a Canucks team that does not need goaltending and do not need defense, where they have too many of them. This is the list without Mancini or even Villander coming through on the back end. This is a Canucks team that's going to be very active. They want to win games. They want to make it to the playoffs. They want to win a Stanley Cup, and the players have said this is a revenge year. But with all these reports coming out, with Jim saying, hey, Patrik's been on the phone every single day, with Patrik Allvin saying, hey, we're open for business, call. do anything, all the way to the reports that they might start looking at a middle six to a bottom six guy, is a little frustrating in the sense that we don't know what the clear direction of them wanting to get a certain position. Now listen, I do believe, and listen, I'm super optimistic, you guys know this as well, that Filip Hronek is going to be set to have a big season. We know Teddy Bluger looks great, Aatu Räty could look a tiny bit better going into the preseason. But with what this team has, I do like that they're not looking at it and saying, hey, let's move 5 first-round picks to bring in a bona fide second-line center. They're waiting out the market. They're taking all their options, and they're waiting to see how this group plays. If you go into the first 10 games and you're 4-6, yes, you need to do a panic move. But the big thing with this team is, and with the expectations of bounce backs, I do think the Canucks are in the proper spot on what they're trying to do. But Canucks fans, what is your thoughts on this? What is your thoughts on the reports that it could be a middle six or it could be a bottom six forward? Do you think this is a great fit? Do you think Patrik Allvin should hold steady, see what the lineup looks like, and maybe go out to make that big move and splash at trade deadline? Let us know down in the comments, but let's go straight into another player where David Bagnota once again will be linked down below. Said Kiefer Sherwood had a career year last year with the Canucks, 19 goals, 40 points. He's in the final year of his contract, and while the Canucks like what he brings to the table, they haven't jumped into negotiations just yet. Now, Kiefer Sherwood, the best name in hockey, let's be honest here, had a great first season with the Vancouver Canucks. Scotia Stats have him projected on a 3-year contract at 3.5. They've been pretty bang on the money unless someone takes a huge discount. So looking at these numbers, it seems like the Canucks are going to be paying Kiefer just over or north of $3 to $4 million on his next deal. Now, if Sherwood comes in here and looks outstanding, if he's on pace for another 19 to 20 goal season, if he goes out and continues putting up these numbers, yes, getting him on this contract is a top priority, a fan favorite, a locker room favorite, someone that just maybe broke a tiny bit of a record, having 462 hits last year. Kiefer Sherwood didn't get to show himself in the playoffs, and unlocking that second gear, which we've seen him do in stretches, does help the Canucks quite a bit, but going a long way to pay someone that had 119 goal season. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and say Kiefer doesn't deserve it, but I do think he's going to have a second breakout going into this year. And if the Canucks don't have a contract in place, maybe the number drives up a tiny bit. Fans, what is your thoughts on this? What is your thoughts on the reports coming around the Canucks? Do you think getting a bottom six forward for cheap to hopefully just put a stopgap in on this team? Do you think they should wait to get the second line center? What is your thoughts on Kiefer Sherwood? Would you give him a 3, 4, 5-year contract at $3 million plus with the cap inflating? That's going to look better every single year. Let us know down in the comments. And speaking of comments, let's go straight into the comment of the day. Coming through with Tillo saying favorite prospect is Wilson Bjork. And listen, Bjork looks awesome. It's a long list of Canucks prospects that are looking like a bit of a gem in the system. Go down and leave a comment on anything we talked on or your favorite Canucks prospect. I love reading through the comments. Plus, you could be like Tillo today and be on comments of the day. Way down there, leave a like, subscribe, share this with your friends. We'll be back in another episode, so keep your eye out for that. But I've been your host, Mark, and take care, Canucks fans. Hopefully they win tonight, and you'll be watching it after, so let me know what the score was.